Hello photographers and welcome to my photography tutorial channel. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about Topaz Studio 2. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to explain you how this software functions, and then I'm going to edit a photo, and along the way, I'm going to explain the tool. So definitely I'm not going to use all the tool because this software has many, but I'm going to explain at least along with all the tools at the top and at the bottom, how to import and how to export. Now, first thing before I continue, I'm going to drag and drop a photo. Now, we've got our image ready. So in this case, we have a portrait. So obviously, the theme of this tutorial will be a portrait image, but of course, all the explanation will be applied to any kind of other photography, such as landscape or architectural. Now, it is important to mention about this software, which is, yes, Topaz Studio 2 is classic software for photo editing, such as Photoshop or Affinity Photo. So you can do many composite. It works as a layer. And if you're familiar with On1 No Noise AI, pretty much the same. And another important thing to mention, which is this software, it cannot do, you shouldn't do batch processing. The reason why, because this software is super duper resource hungry. So it works really well with one single software and it does its best. And the third thing about this software, which is there are two different editing that you can do in this software. First, which is the basic traditional editing, exposure, white balance, spot healing, cropping, adding local adjustment and so on. And of course, as a layer. And the second one, you can add look. Basically, you can do many digital art, composite art, painting looking art in this software. So I'm going to start with the first one, the basic editing and the local adjustment, which is very important. And this is probably the reason why you're probably using this software. And then I'm going to move on to the look, like the composite, the digital art. Now, I just showed you how to import a photo. We basically can do drag and drop. Now, at the top, you have some of the tools that almost every software has and nobody almost care. File to help. Now in file, of course, you have the import or open project and export. You also have preference. I recommend you to go and take a visit because this is really important in order to organize your software. Now at the bottom, you have the name, and then you can click open again to import another image, obviously. Then you have the export, you have the view, so you can do side by side, split, horizontal and vertical view. Again, important tool and common in pretty much every software. So you can click original to check before and after. You can click fit to make sure that it's well fit within that view screen. And you can do 100%. So do like a 100% zoom. I'm going to go back to fit. Of course, you have the slider to go back and forth again. Super important and easy. Now at the bottom, obviously you have a crop tool. So immediately you can start cropping before even you start editing, because a lot of photographers actually prefer to start with cropping first, then move on to the editing so that they don't waste too much time editing a location that later they're going to crop it out. Makes sense. Now, of course, you have the heal tool, spot healing. This software doesn't have any, this image, my apologies, doesn't have any spot or marks. So this tool doesn't need any use. You have a navigator. So if you click it, you can, like for example, you zoomed it quite a bit, 100%. Clicking the navigator, you can actually move wherever you prefer. Again, super important. Imagine yourself that you can actually get to see the photo in a smaller screen while you can, do local adjustment on your complete image. Now I'm gonna click it off. Then of course you have a histogram. I'm gonna leave it on because I really need histogram. This is one of my, most important tool. At the top, you have undo, redo. Obviously, it makes sense. So if you do something, you can click undo, or you can go forward and redo again. Now they're pretty easy to understand, just need a one look and you get the point. Pretty hard to forget. The important part is that how you're going to edit this image. Now, right off the bat, this image is underexposed. So in order to do basic or any kind of editing, like the traditional image editing, you need to start with filter. Now I'm going to click filter, and immediately you have the four different blocks. First one is the essential. Then you have the creative. Then you have the stylistic, and then the plugin. And in plugin, I have denoise AI already available, which means that if you happen to have this software and also happen to have denoise AI, sharpening AI, or other plugin, it will automatically load into the software, which is very, very, very convenient. Now, in the essential, names gives away. You have all the basic tools available that is also can be seen in other photo editing software such as Lightroom or Photoshop, Affinity Photo. Like they are the tool that you need to do any kind of editing first. Now AI clear is kind of like a, clear the photo, can be, noise, can be a little bit blur. So it tried to fix all of it. Now I'm going to zoom in, let's say 100%, and go to her face. I think it's more than 100%, it's 200%. So I'm gonna do 100% zoom. Now it's much better. Now in remove noise, it has auto, and enhance sharpness, it's low. What if I do high? Let's see what happens. Now I can clearly see there's a bar at the top trying to assess the software and trying to apply its effect. Now, this software is super, super, super resource hungry. So you have to be very, very careful when you're trying to do some kind of edit. Now, I'm going to do a before and after. No, I'm going to do original. So that's our original image. And that's after. Now, personally speaking, my honest opinion, I think the hair looks pretty weird to me. I wouldn't do that. I rather, in portrait, sharpness is not your goal. Your goal is to have a soft, beautiful, nice look with a beautiful color. So my recommendation, do not add too much sharpening in a portrait. So I'm going to go to low, see what happens. Now, not bad, but I'm actually going to turn off the AI clear because I think it's not needed in this particular image. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to also do it 50% if possible, somewhere there. Now, much better. Now, add filter, obviously, if we look at our histogram, it's quite underexposed. Clearly, the histogram says it's underexposed. Now, when you have something underexposed, we have many ways to, boost the exposure. And right off the bat, you have the basic adjustment. I'm going to click it. And you can see that in the basic adjustment, you have almost everything. If you have a good photo such as this, except the underexposing, if you have a nice, sharp, clean, beautiful photo, this basic adjustment should be enough for you, and you should be able to move on into the next image. Now, auto white balance, if I turn on, looks like the original auto white balance of the image was good enough already, so it's not doing anything. Now you have the traditional exposure, clarity, shadow, highlight, black level, white level, saturation, temperature, and tint. Now you of course know what are they. Come on, I mean everybody knows them. Now interestingly, as I said, each of the adjustment are the layer, so you can see that you can turn on and off a layer, and even their basic adjustment, you can turn on the mask and you can easily apply that basic adjustment to a specific image, such as using the spot, or you can click brush and then just brush it everywhere. You can do gradient tool so that you can go up and down and apply the basic adjustment layer on that particular location. And importantly, you also have the color and luma. And if you are familiar with the current version of Nik Collection 4 in Viveza, you also have the similar tool. Essentially, you click color on once you do, you have a dropper. So that dropper, if you drop it in any location, in this case, the subject's face, you can see that here it's showing the white one is where it's going to apply the effect on. Now you have the hue, you can change the color to different location. Like if I go back to somewhere else, it's actually going to the green because I moved to green. So you can see that the effect has changed. I'm gonna go back where it was. And then range essentially means that if you go all the way to 100, it's going to pinpoint exactly where it is going to apply. And if you're at 1, like lesser you go, you see that the mask became completely white. So it's going to apply everywhere. So range, basically you select your color and you precise it. Luma works exactly the same way, except instead of color, it will pinpoint on the luminosity. For example, again, I'm going to apply on our face, the dropper. It's selected the drop. Now, the adjustment will be focusing on anything within that exposure range. So this is very high-end and advanced and super useful if you want to be very precise. Now I'm going to delete it because if you're wondering why I'm not, fixing the exposure already with the basic adjustment, I have other tool that I personally use that I like to show you. Now, brightness contrast again is also work with the contrast. Again, this image, particularly the portrait, you need to have less contrast and nice and soft looking. You have a black and white. Obviously, I'm gonna just show you quickly. So it's immediately turned into black and white. Now we have the individual channel. Generally, the red is her skin, red, orange, and yellow. Look at that. And also her dress has a red flower. I'm gonna show you before and after. So you can see that her dress has a red flower. So it's going to effect on that. So if I go all the way up, the red became completely white, including some part of her face. We don't want that. And if you reduce it, her red flower became more contrasty, including part of her face, notably the lips. Now orange, I believe that her face is going to affect on orange side. You can clearly see now, this is basically turned into a fantastic black and white photo with her face brightened up, but the dress, on the other hand, became nice and contrasty, because in the portrait, the face is the most important part. I like it actually, to be honest. I wish I could keep it, but we're gonna move on to the next one. But you got the idea. Each color slider are the luminance slider. So essentially it's going to apply on the luminance. Now, here's the thing, important note. Each of the adjustment layer, just like Photoshop and Affinity Photo or GIMP, you have all kind of, the blend mode. So you can change the blend mode, and if you are familiar with Photoshop, blend mode is a high-end way to, do photo editing. And that's just for another time. I'm just going to give you an overall view, but if you are familiar with blend mode and workflow with the blend mode and in Photoshop, then you can do exact same thing in this software. Again, you have the HSL Color Tuning, which is exactly same as HSL slider in Photoshop, Lightroom, Capture One, DxO Photolab, or any software that provides the similar tool. Interestingly here, you have the color. So each time if you move your cursor on each color, it shows exactly where it belongs. So if I move on to orange, it's showing definitely almost all of our face, hair, and some part of the other image. So if I click on orange now, and just for the example, brighten up the lightness, you can see that her face just got brightened. That is exactly what you want. As a matter of fact, I'm going to keep it for the sake of this tutorial. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add some saturation, and looks pretty good enough. Now you have the detail, surface artifacts, and color sensitivity. Now what happens is that surface artifact means that if you're applying too much, and sometime if it's a JPEG or even if it's a RAW, you might see some artifacts for over editing. So it tries to get rid of all kind of artifacts. Again, remind you, you have the blend mode. You can change everything to different type of blend modes. Important tool if you want to do high-end photo editing. And then that's just a color. So you have the hue slider, where you see you have the orange, red, yellow, all kind of color. If I go to the orange again, which is our face, I move back and forward, and it can change the hue of her skin tone. In my case, what I prefer, and I want to make her skin a slightly reddish. And then saturation, so you change the hue. Now you can change the saturation of that hue. Now I'm gonna go back and forth. And the lightness, again, it did it automatically. You know why? Because in the color, we already did that. So it did its job almost automatically, trying to control the temperature, saturation, and lightness. And again, another reminder, you have a mask here. You click the mask, and you can locally apply exact same tool wherever you prefer. That could have been in that green area, that could have been on her dress. Point is, it just works. Same way as if you are working in Photoshop or Affinity Photo, similar composite software. Now we're gonna move on to another important tool in the Essential. Now, precision contrast, precision detail, they're another way to add contrast, sharpness, and detail. You also have the reduce noise and sharpening. Obviously, again, this is a clean photo and it's sharp and soft. So we don't want to over sharpen. We don't want to reduce noise because it's the noise free. And at the very beginning, I already showed you that you have AI clear, which use artificial intelligence to reduce noise and add sharpening. So this is just another extra layer of tool. Works pretty much the same way. Now this is the Essential. Now there's important things that I didn't show you, which is curve. Now what is curve? And this is where we are going to up the brightness of this image. Now if you're familiar with the curve, you have the global RGB, then you have the red, green, and blue. So of course, let's do something creative. So in blue, I'm going to reduce the blue. In the highlight, add blue in the shadow area and the midtone, and it just became a film look. Wonderful, isn't it? Now in the green, I'm going to go all the way to the top in the highlight and pull it down, and go to the shadow area and pull it up. I have to be a bit more precise. I think I had too much coffee. My hands are shaking. And then I'm going to go to the red. So in the green, I did opposite of the S curve. In red, I'm going to do an S curve. So red on highlight, reducing red in shadow. Maybe in the midtone, I'm going to add some more red. So let me show you before and after. That's our previous photo. That's our current photo. Pretty cool, isn't it? I love it. Now, this does everything. So it boosts the saturation. I'm going to show you an example currently, right now. And the brightness. It is not doing both. It's not doing just one or another. It's doing both. So amplifying the saturation and the brightness. But thing is, you don't want to amplify the saturation. You just want to amplify the brightness of the image, right? How can I do that? This is where I'm going to show you one example of this blend mode. So in blend mode, I'm going to change it to luminosity. So what is happening in luminosity? In simply speaking, at this point, whatever change you do in this adjustment layer will be applied on and only on the brightness, basically shadow, midtone, and highlight. It won't touch the color. Do you know an example? I'm going to show you now. Now check this one out. If I do the brightness, it's only brightening the image, but the color remains same. Now if I change luminosity to the normal, it also made everything brighten and saturated. Again, I'm going to go back to luminosity, and it just did the brightening part. You see, it doesn't look as saturated. And if I do that on color, now it just did oversaturated all the photo, but didn't touch the luminosity. You see how cool things here can do just changing the blend mode. I recommend you to try it and play with it just like a video game. Trust me, you're gonna have fun. So we did brighten our image, right? Now, dehaze, if you have a photo with the haziness, we can use that slider. This photo is not that hazy, so obviously I'm not going to use that. Now, in the creative, we have multiple tools. So first of all, I'm not going to use any blur because this photo has a beautiful background blur by the camera, not artificially added, so I don't need to do that. Now, there are certain things that are really important and I'd like you to show or see, which is, first of all, the channel mixer. So what is channel mixer? Essentially, the channel mixer is more or less the same as HSL tool, and you can do exact same thing with curve, and I just showed you how to do that with curve. With that, I'm going to show you before and after. So I played with the different channel and created a film look, but you can do the same thing with the channel mixer, and this tool also available in Photoshop and Affinity Photo. So if you do just the white and boost red, it will boost the redness of the subject. Same thing with green. Check this one out. The green became bright. But if you do the same thing with the red alone and reduce the redness, it will take away all the redness from the image or add more. So you get the idea. I'm gonna delete it. So either you can use curve to do that and multiple layers of curve, or you can use the channel mixer. It's just basically the same tool with the different packaging, I would say. Now the dual tone, that's something that I'm going to use as a local adjustment. Now in the highlight color, I'm going to amplify some of her red, the white part first. So I'm gonna do that, brightening up as much as I can all the way, and then turn on mask, go to that three dot, invert it, then click brush and change the transparent to white, which means the brush is going to be white now. And I'm going to try to brush it as much as I can. Let's see how does it look. And the brush is pretty cool. I like it, very responsive. It's not lagging at all. And let's see how it looks. Look, check this one out. Now let's show before and after. Before and after. Quite interesting, isn't it? Now, in add filter, there is something else that I was playing yesterday, which is color overlay. Now, what is color overlay exactly? So every time you change the color, it will change the color of the image. I'm going to bring it on the side. See, you know exactly what is happening. It will put a kind of like a color filter on the image. And I'm going to do a red and click OK. And usually if you go to the overlay, such as soft light, overlay, hard light, it will kind of mix it with the original image. Now I'm going to go to the mask, click spot, and do that on her body. Make sure that it's nice and covered, and make sure the transition is nice and big, and opacity is not that, like something soft, nothing too strong, nothing too visible, and make sure everything is covered. And let's see how it looks like. So it kind of separated the subject from the background, so both of them has different color. And then about her dress, because I really like the red flowers on her dress, so I want to amplify it as much as I can. So to do that, I am going to go back to the HSL tool, color tuning, and turn on the mask, make sure it's inverted, then click brush, make the transparency all the way to the white, but not white, less than white, so that the effect is not that strong, and brush it on her dress as much as I can. Doesn't need to be perfect, because remember, rest of her dress is not that white, it is actually green, so you don't need to worry about it. And once you are done masking, you can see that the effect where it happened. Now go back to the color tuning, check where is the red, so click red, make sure you click red, and color is selected. You can even do with the saturation, but I prefer color. And let's amplify the red saturation. You can see that her red is becoming more and more reddish. That's pretty awesome, isn't it? So you get the idea what it does and how it works. Now we are in the creative part. Yeah, of course you can add vignette is something important, and I personally like it because the fact that you have a little box and you can move the vignette very conveniently wherever you prefer. And that is something like crazy good. And personally, I don't know why. Don't ask me, because I just feel like it. I like the white vignette more than the red vignette, the dark vignette. It just, I don't know, there is something about it. I think it works perfectly with the portrait. Now I'm going to try to reduce the opacity. Yep, look just good. Now it just have this dreamy look. I don't know. I think I'm falling in love with this vignette thingy. I'm gonna go back up to her face a little bit so that it doesn't get covered with this white vignette. And then of course you can add text. In this case, I'm going to write something. Let's say Topaz Studio. And then this is probably the most boring font in the mankind history, so I'm going to change it to my personal favorite, which is Impact. So I'm just going to click I and see what it takes me. So Impact, Beam. And then of course you can move it, but before I move it everywhere, I'm just going to change the color to God knows what, but let's gonna give it a go. Let's see what happens when I change it to red. Now it looks pretty good. Now click OK, and the border color, just a traditional black, and click OK, and move it to somewhere here, and voila. And let's make the border a bit bigger. Beam looks just perfect. In fact, I'm gonna change the border color to white. White looks good. Now this is a very interesting tool, right? So I like it. So you know exactly how does it work. Now I'm going to go to the add filter. Now we already pretty much covered, at least you got the idea how the software works, number one. Number two, you already know how to do local adjustment with each layer, just like Photoshop. And you know how to change blend mode, and you know how to do local adjustment with the luminosity and the color. Now, the last but not the least, which is I told you that you can also do composite and digital art. Now, what does it mean? So you have two options. Either you can add filter and then go to the stylic and click it and it will change it to something crazy, or you can go to the add look. I'm going to go one at a time. Now, in stylic, Each time you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different style. I'm going to show you 2 or 3. The reason behind I'm not going to show you everything is because first, I'm having a feeling that yesterday when I was trying, this software crashed because, as I said, it's going to apply a lot of crazy digital art, which means also your computer may or may not explode. So I'm gonna try with the abstraction, and let's see what it does when I do amplify size. And you can clearly see that it's kind of made it look pretty damn weird. Now, interestingly, it's also applying on your text here. So you can also pull it down to the actual image, for instance. So I'm going to go all the way down. So what's happening is that now it's going to apply all the adjustment on top of the abstraction. So that's one of the example. I'm going to go to something else that I actually like, the radiance. That's something that I found quite crazy, weird, and awesome at the same time. So what it does, if you push the strength all the way to, say, almost 50, beam. I mean, if you're a big fan of Disneyland, this is amazing. You also have the dark one. So if you change it to dark, it's probably going to change it to something. I'm going to delete it before my wife comes and asks me questions about my life choice. And then you have the third one, let's say texture. And in each texture, you have like a different kind of texture. So you can select one of them. And I highly recommend once you apply it, right, go to the blend mode and change it to, let's say, soft light or hard light or overlay. So what's happening, it's kind of making it, disappear and then keeping only the abstract. You can also do the lighten, for example. I don't know what happens with the darken. Darken also works. So play with the different blend mode, because any blend mode are better than just a basic, texture blended on top of the image. It just doesn't work. And then finally, as I said earlier, if you have a plugin, it will show you automatically, and then you can just use the denoise plugin or sharpening plugin and so on. Now, you have another tab here which is called Add Look. So what are they? If I show you, I'm going to show you 1 or 2 example. You have almost, God knows, many. I think about more than 50 or 60 of them. I'm just going to scroll down, and as I scroll down, you can see that what it's going to do as you apply. Now I'm going to apply one of them, and then I'm going to show you how to export. Let's say I'm going to use breaking through, and it will take some time, and beam, you have that look applied on the image. The reason why I'm not showing the other one, because you got the idea how that works. And second, if I show you even more than 2 or 3, I'm having a feeling that again my software or my computer going to crash. So once you're done, you have the export button. Go to the export. You have the file format. If you are going to do any further editing, I recommend you TIFF. If not, stick with JPEG. Quality 100%. Color profile, leave it at RGB. Don't play with the other one. It's just useless. Trust me. The reason why, because RGB are supported by almost everything. Pro Photo RGB, you need a printer and a screen that support Pro Photo. Even Adobe RGB is too much. Trust me. Once you're done, you do an export and you are good to go. I'm not going to export anyway. So yeah, this is my little overall tutorial on Topaz Studio 2. You can do many more things. Obviously, there are plenty of other tutorials. I'm not the joy of photo editing with other guy. I'm me. So go and check out the other guy and to get into the depth of this software. But this is just overall to get you started. Look after yourself. Bye-bye.